I knew something was wrong when my son came home and did not call me mother. For 40 years, that word was the first sound I heard from him every evening. He would open the wooden door, remove his dusty shoes, and say, "Mother, I am home." But that night, he entered quietly and looked past me as if I were a stranger. My name is Evelyn. I am 68 years old, and my son, Daniel, is the only family I have left. His father died when Daniel was 5. From that day, I lived for my child. I worked, cooked, cleaned, and prayed for him. Now he stood in front of me with fear in his eyes, and I felt my heart become cold. I asked him if something bad had happened in the fields. He shook his head, but still avoided my eyes. His hands were rough from work, and his shirt was covered with dust. I placed dinner on the table, but he only took 2 bites. Then he said, "Mother, I want to marry Clara." I had heard her name before. She was young, pretty, and from a village across the river. I smiled, because a mother must smile when her child speaks about happiness. I told him I was glad if he was glad. He looked relieved, but I saw something else behind his relief. I saw worry. That night, after he slept, I sat alone beside the lamp and wondered why joy felt so heavy. The wedding was small, but the village came to bless them. Clara wore a white dress with tiny flowers around the sleeves. Daniel looked proud, almost like the little boy who once showed me his first school prize. I stood beside them and thanked God quietly. I wanted to love Clara because my son loved her. When she entered our house after the wedding, I placed my hands on hers and said, "This is your home now." She smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. At first, I told myself she was shy. A new bride needs time. A new house feels strange. A new mother can feel like a wall. So I decided to be patient and kind. For the first week, I tried to make life easy for her. I woke early and swept the floor before she came out of her room. I prepared breakfast, washed the cups, and left the kitchen clean. When she cooked, I stood near the door and asked if she needed help. She always said no. Her voice was polite, but sharp. One morning, I showed her where we kept the flour because she was looking in the wrong jar. She closed the lid loudly and said, "I know how to run a house." I apologized at once. I did not want trouble. Yet, after that day, she changed. She stopped asking me anything. She moved through the house like I was not there. Small things began to hurt more than big words. Clara would serve Daniel tea and forget mine. She would close the kitchen door when I walked near it. If a neighbor visited, she spoke sweetly and called me "dear mother." But when the neighbor left, her face became hard again. I kept telling myself not to complain. Daniel worked long hours under the sun. He needed peace at home, not 2 women fighting. So I swallowed my sadness and stayed quiet. But silence is a strange thing. Sometimes it protects a house. Sometimes it allows lies to grow inside it. I did not know then that my silence would soon be used against me in a way I never expected. One afternoon, I returned from the well carrying a small bucket of water. I stopped outside the window when I heard Clara speaking to our neighbor, Mara. Clara was crying softly, but her words were clear. She said I shouted at her every day. She said I called her lazy, useless, and unworthy of my son. My fingers became weak around the bucket handle. Water spilled onto my feet. I wanted to enter and tell Mara the truth, but my legs did not move. Clara continued, "I cannot live like this. Daniel does not see what his mother does." Mara comforted her. I stood outside, old and shaking, while another woman cried with fake tears and stole my name for me. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. His face looked tired, but there was also anger in it. He did not greet me first. He went straight to Clara and asked if she was all right. She looked at me, then lowered her head. "I am trying," she whispered. I understood then that the neighbor had spoken to him, or Clara had told him the same story again. Daniel turned to me and asked, "Mother, did something happen today?" His voice was gentle, but it carried doubt. That doubt cut deeper than any insult. I wanted to say everything, but Clara stood behind him, waiting. I only said, "Nothing happened, my son." He nodded, yet he did not believe me completely. After that day, Daniel began watching me, not openly, but I could feel it. If Clara dropped a pot, he looked at me. If she cried in her room, he looked at me. If dinner was late, he looked at me. My own house became a place where every breath needed permission. Clara became cleverer too. She never insulted me when Daniel was present. She only cried after he returned from work. She spoke in broken sentences, as if she was too hurt to explain. "Your mother does not want me here," she would say. "She wants you for herself." Daniel always answered, "No, she is old. She loves us." But each time his answer became weaker, and my fear became stronger. One rainy night, everything became worse. Daniel came home soaked and hungry after working in mud all day. He asked Clara for dinner, but she did not answer. He called again, and still there was silence. I was in my small room mending an old blanket. Then I heard Clara begin to cry loudly. She said she could not cook because I had hidden the rice. I stood up in shock. The rice was exactly where it always was. Daniel opened the jar and found it full. For 1 second, truth stood in front of him, but Clara quickly covered her face and said, "She put it back before you came." My son looked from her to me, confused and broken. I could not stay silent that time. I said, "Daniel, I did not touch the rice." My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. Clara turned toward him and whispered, "See, she always acts innocent." Daniel pressed his fingers against his forehead. He looked like a man standing between two fires. I wanted to hold him the way I held him when he was small, but he was no longer a child. He was a husband now. Clara then said the sentence that changed everything. "You must choose. I cannot live with her anymore." The room became very still. Rain hit the roof above us. Daniel did not answer. He simply walked outside into the dark, leaving us behind. He stayed outside for a long time. I watched him through the small window as he stood under the rain with his head lowered. Clara sat at the table, dry-eyed now, waiting for his decision. I realized her tears had been a door, and she had opened it exactly where she wanted. When Daniel returned, he looked older than before. He told Clara they would talk in the morning, then he went to bed without eating. I sat alone in my room and remembered a night from his childhood. He had a fever and cried for water. I stayed awake until sunrise, afraid his small body would stop breathing. Now I was afraid again, but this fear was different. The next morning, I heard Clara speaking before the sun fully rose. Her voice was low, but our walls were thin. She told Daniel that no marriage could survive with his mother in the house. He said he could rent another room for her nearby. Clara refused. She said people would laugh if his old mother lived alone and visited every day. Then she said something colder. "There is another way." My breath stopped. Daniel asked what she meant. Clara answered, "Take her to the hill. Everyone knows the path is dangerous. She is old. People will believe she slipped." I covered my mouth with both hands. Daniel did not shout. He did not refuse. He only remained silent, and that silence hurt more than shouting. All day, Daniel moved like a man who had lost his soul. He repaired a broken chair, then left it unfinished. He carried water from the well, then forgot the bucket outside. Once, he came into my room and looked at me for a long time. I pretended not to notice. I knew he was fighting a war inside himself. I wanted to help him, but what could I say? Do not kill your mother? The words were too terrible to speak. In the evening, I cooked his favorite soup. He sat before it and stared at the bowl. Clara watched us from the doorway. No one ate much. The house felt full of ghosts, though we were all still alive. After dinner, Daniel came to my room. He stood near the door like a visitor. His eyes were red and his lips were dry. "Mother," he said, "tomorrow we will go to the hill." I looked at him, and in that moment, I saw my whole life inside his face. I saw the baby I carried. I saw the boy who learned to walk by holding my fingers. I saw the young man who cried at his father's grave. I also saw the husband who had become afraid of losing his wife. I wanted to ask him why, but I already knew why. So I said only, "All right, my son, wake me early. The path is long, and I am slow now." I did not sleep that night. I folded my old shawl and placed it beside me. I touched the walls of my small room as if saying goodbye to them. This house had heard my laughter, my prayers, and my crying. I had raised Daniel under this roof. Every corner carried a memory. Near the door, I remembered measuring his height with charcoal marks. Beside the bed, I remembered telling him stories during storms. I wondered if those memories meant anything to him now. Before dawn, I washed my face and put on my cleanest dress. If I was going to die, I wanted to meet death with dignity. When Daniel entered, I smiled so he would not tremble more. He lifted me onto his back because my knees were too weak for the climb. His body felt strong, but his breathing was uneven. Clara stood at the door and watched us leave. She did not cry. She did not even pretend. The sky was pale, and the village was still sleeping. As Daniel walked away from the house, I looked back once. Smoke was rising from a few rooftops. Dogs barked in the distance. Everything looked normal, as if the world did not know a son was carrying his mother toward death. I rested my hands gently on his shoulders. I remembered carrying him on my back when he was little. Now he carried me, but not with love. The road to the hill passed through the same fields where Daniel worked every day. The crops were still wet with morning mist. He walked slowly, and sometimes his foot slipped on the stones. Each time I held his shoulder tighter, not because I feared falling, but because I feared he would fall. That is the strange heart of a mother. Even when her child breaks her, she still worries for him. We passed the old fig tree where Daniel used to play as a boy. I almost told him the memory, but I stopped. If I spoke too much, his courage might break too early. And part of me believed he needed to reach the top before truth reached him. As we climbed higher, Daniel began to breathe heavily. Sweat ran down his neck, though the morning was cool. He stopped near a rock and bent forward, still holding me carefully. I could feel his heart beating fast against my side. "Are you tired?" I asked. He answered, "No," but his voice cracked. I knew he was not tired from my weight. He was tired from the decision waiting above us. I looked at the narrow path ahead and noticed loose stones near the edge. The hill was dangerous, exactly as Clara had said. A person could fall easily. A person could disappear quickly. I closed my eyes and prayed, not for my life, but for his lost and tired soul. When we reached the top, the village looked small below us. Our house was only a brown dot among trees. Daniel placed me gently on the ground. He did not look at me. He looked at the empty air beyond the edge. For a long moment, the wind was the only sound. I could see his hands opening and closing. He was fighting the final moment. I decided not to wait for him to speak. "My son," I said softly, "I know why you brought me here." His whole body became still. He turned slowly. His face was white. "What do you know?" he whispered. I smiled with sadness. A mother knows the pain inside her child before he says it. Daniel stepped back, as if my words had struck him. Tears filled his eyes, but he tried to hide them. I pointed to a thick tree branch near the edge. "When you push me," I said, "hold that branch first. The ground is loose there. I do not want you to fall after me." He stared at the branch, then at me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I had not begged. I had not cursed him. I had only worried about his safety. That was more than his heart could carry. Suddenly, he fell to his knees beside me. He covered his face with both hands and cried like the child I once held through fever and fear. "I was going to do it," he said through tears. "I was really going to do it." His words did not surprise me, but hearing them still hurt. I placed my hand on his head. His hair was no longer soft like when he was young, but under my palm he was still my child. He said Clara had filled his mind with fear. She told him he would lose his marriage. She told him he would never have peace. She told him I had controlled him all his life. He believed her little by little, not because her words were true, but because he was tired. I listened without interrupting. Some confessions need space before forgiveness can breathe and become real. After a while, Daniel looked up at me and said, "How can you still care about me?" I answered, "Because I am your mother." The words were simple, but they seemed to break the last wall inside him. He held my hands and promised he would never hurt me. Then he lifted me again, but this time he turned away from the edge. We began walking down the hill together. His steps were different now. They were still slow, but they were no longer lost. Halfway down, he stopped near the fig tree and cried again. He remembered playing there as a boy. I remembered too. For the first time in many weeks, we remembered the same truth together again. When we reached home, Clara was standing in the doorway. Her face changed when she saw me on Daniel's back. First shock came, then anger, then fear. Daniel lowered me gently near the chair and faced her. His voice was calm, but stronger than I had heard in months. He told her he knew the truth now. He told her that a wife could be loved, but a mother could not be thrown away like broken wood. Clara tried to cry again, but no tears came. She accused me of turning him against her. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said, "you almost turned me against myself." That sentence finally ended the house of lies she had built around him. Clara packed her clothes before sunset. No neighbor came to stop her. I did not insult her as she left. I only watched quietly from my chair. Daniel stood beside me, ashamed and silent. After she disappeared down the road, he asked if I hated him. I looked at his tired face and saw the boy I had protected for a lifetime. "No," I said, "but never let anyone teach you to forget your own heart." Years have passed since that day. Daniel still comes home from the fields every evening and calls me mother. We do not speak often about the hill, but we remember it. My son carried me toward death, but love carried us home again forever.